Angela Laborde, welcome back onto the stream. I hope you're well.
Thanks, Joel. Hey, everyone. It's good to be back.
And thank you so much for agreeing to come back for a consecutive. It's the first time we've ever had anyone join us for 2 weeks in a row. So I think it says a lot for how popular you were when you were last on, but also how easy it was for us to talk and share our experiences. So thank you again for giving up your Sunday.
Yeah, anytime. I was not a popular person in school growing up, so I'm just going to pat myself on the back for being popular for once in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I live stream on a Sunday, so it tells you how popular I was on that skill. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us again. I know we obviously went really deep into your conditions and journey and everything else. I'm conscious we might have people watching either live this week or that are listening to the podcast and things in different orders. So just so they've got a little flavour, do you want to maybe give us like a 5-minute intro of who you are, what conditions you live with, and then we'll get on to this week's topic?
Yeah, so we'll start kind of back at the beginning. My name's Angela. I'm 31. I live in Louisiana, kind of about an hour and a half outside of New Orleans. That's a good reference point for people who don't know much about Louisiana. And I live with my dog, my husband. I'm from here. My whole family's pretty much here. I work in HR remotely, and I diagnosis wise, I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, but I have a few other conditions too. I have small fiber neuropathy and what we think is trigeminal neuralgia. I might also have Sjogren's. I've got like a couple different skin things too. So I've kind of have migraines, all that. So I've kind of the last like 5 or 6 years, I've ended up kind of going from like a very typical healthy person to all of a sudden just starting to pick up all these things kind of as time went on. So that's a kind of like a brief overview of me, kind of what I've been dealing with.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that's difficult when we've got into such detail the week before. And I suppose for anyone that's listening to this back or joining us for the first time live this week, essentially, Andrew and I, we were like two people at a bus stop just chatting away, like killing time and talking all about all things PSA and all of Angela's experiences and how these autoimmune conditions tend to come in 1s and 2s and 3s and time went, and we were supposed to be talking about a bit more about awareness events like World Arthritis Day, as it was last time we were talking, or it was just after, and volunteering. So we never got onto any of that. And I think that probably says a lot for the quality of the conversation when you were last with us, Angela. So this time I owe it to you that we need to talk about that side of things. So I think where we left off on our last conversation is we then start talking about community, and it was a little bit rushed to squeeze it in the end. So maybe let's start there in terms of like, why you now get involved with the community. I think you talked about Reddit before and forums and things like that. Do you want to maybe pick it back up there, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was officially getting diagnosed, so that was beginning of 2023, I finally had gotten back into rheumatology after, several failed attempts to figure out what was going on and being dismissed from another rheumatologist. So I had gotten back in and, was told that I probably had psoriatic arthritis, but they wanted to give it a few months, see how I responded to treatment, kind of see how my symptoms were before they put that label on it, as opposed to ankylosing spondylitis or one of the other conditions. So, at the time, they don't really give you anything to go off of when you're getting diagnosed, right? Like this might be different in other places, but at least at my very busy doctor's office where the rheumatologists are slammed with patients from the entire state and sometimes the neighboring states, they don't really have a lot of time to educate you on what's going on. So you really kind of are in a spot where you have to seek out support, your resources, your community. Like you have to kind of take on that burden, I think we talked about last time, of figuring everything else yourself. So, kind of as I was going through that process all of last year, 2023, trying to figure out, okay, now I have this diagnosis, I'm trying to figure out medications. Obviously, I need support, but I don't know where to get it, how to get it. I don't, like there was a lot of stuff going on, and to kind of give you all a little bit of an idea of like where your mental state is kind of at a lot of times when you're in a spot like that, which I'm sure is something that's very familiar to a lot of people, is
Yeah.
that, I was feeling horrible like all year. Like I just felt like a garbage can that was sitting outside in the sun for a very long time. Like you feel terrible. And you feel that way in a lot of ways, right? You're trying to figure out how to live with your mobility changing constantly. You're dealing with medication side effects because I tried 5 medications in 1 year.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, last year we went through 5,
And
and
we're not talking sort of lightweight, low key medications here, I'm
no,
guessing.
like I went through like several DMARDs. I went through some NSAIDs before, we started getting off on like the biologics journey, which, you can't go through 5 biologics in a year. So like I wasn't going through that many biologics. It was kind of a combo of that
Yeah.
plus the DMARDs plus the NSAIDs. And you're constantly dealing with side effects. Like I lost some hair with methotrexate. Like you're going through a lot of things that also impact like your social and your self-esteem stuff too, because it's not just, oh well, you know, I'm in pain all the time. I'm in pain all the time and I'm also losing hair, or I'm in pain all the time and I can't go participate with something I want to do because I don't have the energy, or these medications, I don't know how immunosuppressed I am. Can I go to that event? Is it a bad idea? So I was kind of in that whole space last year where every corner that I turned to, it was just kind of like a closed door. And, I was feeling horrible. And in a lot of ways, like I didn't really have a good, like a, how do I say this? I have a very supportive like immediate family, but like I said earlier, I've never been the popular kid at school. I don't have a ton of friends. Most of my friends that I do have live out of state. Maybe you lose touch during the pandemic. I didn't really have like that extra support network, other than like my regular therapist that I see. And, that was kind of a lot because I was going to her every week and just like trauma dumping, which as we do, when you live with a
Yeah.
chronic illness, like it's like you're trauma dumping all the time, even if you don't mean to. I think we as humans need to have grace and space for each other to be able to vent without,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's just kind of like you feel like you've told someone the same thing over and over. And I was going to my therapist, and I mean that's what they're for, right? To help you with that. And so I was going every week and I was telling her, how horrible everything was. And I was like, I don't know how to get support. And she was like, I don't know how to get support for you either. She's like other than,
That's reassuring.
other than me, she's like, I don't know like how to help. Like, how do we, I can't make your medicines work. And she's like, and I like, and like she is great and very helpful, but in a realistic way of like, how can, she was thinking, how can I as a therapist provide targeted support for my patients who have arthritis when I'm not an expert in it and I don't have arthritis, right? Like
Yeah.
they can help you with your mental health, but they can't stop all of the things that are impacting your mental health, like the stress from the meds and all the stuff going on in your life. It also makes work a lot harder. So if you're using up all your energy and then you don't have any energy to do anything nice for yourself, then you just feel, bad all the time. So I was in like a really unfun place where I was like crying all the time just because like I didn't have the energy to do anything else. I didn't have anyone to talk to about who knew what I was going through. So I just, I started kind of looking through hashtags on Instagram. Like I go through big periods of time where I don't use Instagram. So I re-downloaded it on my phone and I like logged back into my account and I started just going through hashtag searches of like, okay, well, there's got to be other people out there that are talking about what's going on. I found the Reddit groups and they were, super informative, but it's the thing that was kind of lacking from that is that, you don't really make friends on Reddit. I mean, I guess some people do. I don't I find that it's like a lot more of like an informational type of
Yeah,
platform. Like you're,
yeah.
So you're not, it's not like you're making a
Because
buddy
you're like
that you're going to hang
consumed,
out
don't
with.
you? You're either sharing or consuming. It's not really a sort of a two-way personal thing. That's been my experience anyway.
Right. Like you're not really like making a buddy on there that you're gonna, talk to every day or something like that or
Yeah.
every week. So, I was trying to build myself some sort of like support network from all of these small things. And so I started following a few people on Instagram who post a lot about their stuff with arthritis. Because I was also trying to learn about the things that the doctors don't have time to tell you about all the biologics and stuff too.
Yeah.
And I was honestly trying to look for examples of people with my condition to see how much better did life get for them once they got on some meds that worked. At the
Mhm.
time, I wasn't totally sure like how long of a journey that would be, and it's obviously still ongoing. I
It's
haven't
a
really
big
found
problem, though, isn't it? That people get put on the meds, and this is something I've campaigned in the past, not so much recently, but like nobody's having that conversation about what success looks like or what's the sort of outcome, the desired outcome. That so we put things on them, we put people on these treatments, and then we wait for them to get better. But I think it would help if the patient actually knew what success looks like, because that can be very different to you to what it could be to me as the doctor. Do you know what I mean?
right. And like as an HR person, I'm never going to administer a performance evaluation if there are not metrics that we're checking. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what are my metrics? What are we looking here for here? Like, how much better can I get? What should I expect? And, pretty much the answer was always, it's different for everyone. Everyone responds to the meds differently, which is not the answer that you want to hear.
Yeah.
Because as a patient, it doesn't really give you any idea of how long it's going to go, right? Like I'm 6 medications in and we haven't found the one that really works for me yet. So
And also, like you said, sorry to interrupt, you said like with the
you could,
works for you, would your medical professional know what working for you looks like? Because I don't think mine would. I know we talked on last week's show, you said you had a really good relationship, but I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like going back to that
Mhm.
similar point I mentioned a minute ago, in that, if they don't know what working for you as an individual looks like, you're able to do the things you want to do. How do you know when you've arrived at that point?
Right. Like for me, I was doing half marathons before. So
Mhm.
my thought is, okay, is that even theoretically achievable for me? Or is it, I can maybe run again, but I could not do anything more than a 5K? Or maybe I can't run anymore, but I can walk and go back to Pilates and go back to all the things I had to give up over the course of the last few years because I could no longer physically tolerate it. Like,
Mhm.
how much can I get back? And like my doctor, you know, he never gives me a straight answer on that. And I think it's because he knows that it's different for everyone and it
Yeah,
really just
difficult
depends.
question.
So I'm always just like, okay, well, how much can I get? Like, what can I expect? Like, what is reasonable, and what do I just need to like grieve forever and just move on? And that's kind of the hard thing. Is like, I mean, everything I've talked about so far has been like one big long grieving cycle, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and then it's hard because everything's up and down. So you grieve something, and then maybe you get a little bit of it back, and you ungrieve, and then you lose it, and you have to grieve again. So like, you're all over the place. And so I started looking for examples on like Instagram to see, okay, real people on their accounts, what are they doing now that they've gotten treatment? If they're on Enbrel, what does that look like for them? If they're
Yeah.
on Simzio, what does that look like for them? So I started following, like, I will say there's not as many PSA people out there posting publicly as there are RA.
RA is everywhere, isn't it? And
RA is everywhere.
I think, that's what, especially your side, stateside, that's been my experience as an advocate and a patient, and I think that then lends to that sort of whole thing where everyone assumes you've got RA. Like, as somebody that lives with psoriatic disease,
Mhm.
the amount of times has been just assumed that I have RA, and I think that feeds into it.
Yeah. And so, I started for just I was like, all right, well, I'm going to follow the RA people. I'm going to follow the PSA people. I'm going to follow some ankylosing spondylitis people, maybe some fibromyalgia people. I was like, let me just follow people just to get a general sense of like what might be possible. And then for some of the folks I follow with PSA, like some of them we're also runners and we're running again with treatment. And I was like, oh, can I, is that something I can hope for? But then, at the same time too, is like, as good as like social networking is to like kind of connect you with people, it's also not the easiest way to make friends with people you don't already sort of know or have gotten to know in another way. So, I can comment on somebody's post, you know, all day, every day, but it doesn't also mean that again, it's not like always a two-way thing. And it's not that if that person's sharing their experience, they may not really, they're not there to build exactly like a support group. They're there to showcase their experience and probably occasionally interface with people who follow them.
There's also that issue where people are trying to build an image, or unfortunately now almost like a brand, and I think that was my biggest challenge. So like I started following just everyone who had psoriasis. Well, the biggest issue I had, first of all, being a man in my late 30s at the time, was they were all female and they were all young. There was no one that felt relatable. There was no men sharing their skin or their rashes, so that didn't feel relatable. And then the other issue I had is that everyone was trying to sell me something and I had no interest in any of that. I just wanted to know, how do you manage? How do you cope? Do you care about the mental health side too? And why does nobody ask us about it? And, them sort of things. So it's a hard thing to weed through, isn't it?
It is. And yeah, and too, it's kind of, but then, you see those and, or you see maybe a lot of people you follow are succeeding and then you're not. And then you're
Yes.
comparing yourself and you're like, why am I not running like psoriatic arthritis girl 524 on Instagram? Like, why can she run and I can't? Like, do I need to get on her medication? Or
Yeah.
the other thing too is like, okay, well, you have to think too, you think of all the symptoms we have. If someone's primary symptoms were like joint pain, well, something might be more achievable for them that isn't for those of us with mostly enthesitis, and vice versa. Like there might be things that, come back more easily depending on the type of symptoms you have and the severity of your symptoms.
Yeah.
So, so that's the other thing too, is like, then you'd be like, oh, well, they're really succeeding and I'm not. And I appreciate what I'm learning from them, but it's also giving me something else to feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
Why am I not doing as well? I'm doing everything the doctors told me. I've done everything right. I've always done, everything that I was supposed to do. And that's like a big thing for me. Like personally, is like I always was trying to do everything I was supposed to do, right? Like, and then it doesn't work. And then it's, just because life isn't like that. Like you can do
Yeah.
everything right and it still doesn't work out. And
That-
so that was something too, part of the grieving process. That I'm like, well, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. Why am I not better? And so, at that point, I was, having, I was like, should I get off Instagram again? I don't know. Like, what's helping me? What's not helping me? And then I got a targeted ad for the Arthritis Foundation on Facebook, of all
Right.
places. And probably because I was doing the same thing on Facebook, I was going into the search bar and just typing in psoriatic arthritis and seeing what the public posts were. And most of them were like, I've cured my arthritis with celery juice. Or if you take, there's one that's like, if you take Dr. something or other's herbal remedies, it will
Yeah,
cure
yeah.
all. Yeah.
It always seems to cure herpes. Every single message and comment that I get is telling me how it can cure that.
And I'm like, I wasn't aware that I was also diagnosed with that and
Yeah,
top of
yeah,
everything else. But thank you for letting me know, right? Like,
yeah.
so then I guess because I had searched for arthritis related things, I started getting targeted ads. And so I was like, okay, well, let me look at that. Because the other thing I was having too is when I was doing research about the condition online, I was largely going to sites like WebMD or, like those really medical journal type
Mhm.
sites.
Yeah, yeah.
And that tells you a lot about the medical technicalities of the disease, but it doesn't tell you anything about how are patients coping and
Yeah, the
like,
human story of it all.
yeah, and it doesn't really tell you stuff like that. So, I got that targeted ad. I started digging through their website and was like, oh, they have, and like, they have resources, they have support groups, they have events. And I was like, why was no one publicizing this to me? Why at my rheumatologist's office do they not have like a flyer for this? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
what we can take. I was like, I had no idea this was a thing. And like, that's actually kind of funny because I worked prior to like my most recent role, I have worked in nonprofits for like several years, two different ones, before and during COVID. So like,
Mhm.
I'm usually attuned to a lot of the local groups. And then kind of what I found out is in Louisiana, they don't really have a huge presence, and like they kind of have like a joint local regional chapter with Texas and Arkansas, which is why they weren't so heavily publicized here. So, it took me getting like a targeted ad because the algorithms had seen I had searched for it. And then from there, I, found that they have, what the Arthritis Foundation does is they have in person and virtual groups, and they have a bunch that are like the in-person ones are largely like location based, but then the virtual national groups are topic based, right? So there is psoriatic arthritis group, there's a JA group, there's chronic pain, there's ankylosing spondylitis, there's LGBTQ plus group, with any kind of rheumatic disease, and so they had a ton of resources. They had informational medical stuff as well as like other types of mental health support and like,
Mhm.
advocacy work and where you could really get involved. So I signed up for the Psoriatic Arthritis Connect group, and then kind of started. At the time they were only meeting like 4 times a year because volunteers have to kind of run those groups, so you have to have enough
Yeah, yeah.
volunteers. And so after my first meeting, we had a ton of people at that first. It was like January. It was either December of last year or January of this year, and the facilitators said, this group is, we've gotten a lot of people join the group, and we meet via Zoom. So we had a lot of people join, and they were like, we'd like to increase the amount of times a year we're meeting, but to do that, we need more people to do volunteer facilitators. So I offered to do it. Went through. They have the Arthritis Foundation actually trains their volunteers extremely well.
Oh, that's
So like you
amazing.
go through like a training, and they kind of get you squared away. And then so I started helping with that, and we started increasing our meetings. They were meeting like quarterly before, and now we're meeting every other month,
Okay.
because we have the extra bandwidth. And for me, it's been really awesome because one, it guarantees that I have the time every other month where I can just talk to people with PSA. I don't have to explain anything to them. They just know, like I can say like
Mhm.
my enthesitis hurts really bad, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, which is, something that's hard when, even in regular therapy, like if I need to complain about a specific symptom, I have to explain what it is first, so that there's a frame of reference. But,
Yeah.
so like they guarantee pretty much know what you're talking about. And then, it's just a nice time where, and we try to keep things, at least on our end, we try to keep it from being so like gloom and doom, because the reality of a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
our stuff is that we feel gloom and doomy a lot because our bodies are trying to destroy us, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's nothing happy about that. So like what we try to do is we try to like have space for like big feelings and venting, but we try not to let anybody like leave us feeling worse than when they got
Yeah.
there, right? Like we hope that like, with the sense of community, with getting to share, and we give each other ideas too. Like if someone's asking how did somebody treat XYZ, and then we'll have 3 people share, and or, oh, have you asked your doctor about this? So we have like a really diverse group of people who've come. We don't always have the same people come every other month, but we have seen like a group, like a core group of familiar faces of people who like, like this group means like so much to them because, and we have a lot of people talk about too, like they don't, not everybody has any type of support system, and a lot of people don't have a supportive family, or,
No.
maybe they live by themselves and they're like struggling to do everything, because they don't even have anyone to help. So, I have found that it has been really positive experience for me, because even though, I'm still not anywhere near remission, I could not sit in those negative feelings like the way that I was. And like, not to say that things are like, that I'm like never upset about it. Like I literally cried like 2 days ago because my foot hurt. Um,
Mm.
but like it gives me some, like I need to feel productive as a person. Like I needed to take those feelings and I needed to be productive with them in some way. And I'm not saying that this is what everyone has to do. This is just a me thing.
No, I can
And
very much relate. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you now.
it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, it's like I've been burdened with this horrible disease and I need to take something from this and like turn it around. And it almost like, almost like challenging the disease a little bit. Like you are here to try to ruin my life and I'm going to try to fight you back so that you can't totally do that. Right. Like what can I
It's
take that you're
liberating.
throwing at me and what can I turn around and make something positive out of it? And like as a person, I'm very much a realist. I'm not like a pessimistic person and I'm not really like a dreamer idealistic person. I'm like right in the middle. So I like accept the reality. Like I try to accept where I am and the realities of the situation, which, is something that you have to do, right? You have to, sometimes you just hit in the face with something and you're like, okay, well, this is bad. And I have to accept that it's bad, but I can still
Yeah.
give myself something positive.
I have to remind people of that as well, going back to the social media thing,
Mhm.
because the amount of times I'll get DMs saying, well, that's okay for you, you're doing well, or that's okay for you, you don't look like you got psoriasis. And you kind of have to remind people, well, look, that is a roller coaster. Where I am at the minute is one point in my life, but trust me, I was very much at the bottom of that black hole another time. And so I think it's why, like, I try to inject when we're doing either these shows or when, like, so my peer support community is the Discord thing, and very similar to what you said about not trying to be too doom and gloom. Like, we focus very much on escapism and distraction, and so we'll have spaces on our Discord server where people can share that stuff. But when we're doing the Twitch streams or playing computer games together, we very much try and keep that off topic a little bit, just so that people can have that space in their day where they can switch off and recharge and feel seen and supported. But yeah, that topic comes up a lot. Like, oh, you're doing okay, look, and well, I'm not. I'm in a ton of pain, or I threw up right before I came onto a live stream. All this. So I think it's really important that we share those. We talked about social media earlier. We share those bad days as well as the good days, right? For that very reason.
Right. And it's, a lot of times it's hard to share your bad days when you have like a more invisible disease because, you can't really see it a lot of the time. Like if I go to something, most people can, my ankle might be hurting like nobody's business, but the only person who might be able to tell is my husband. Right. Like, because I might be like faking it,
Yeah,
to
we
have a
we're
good
good at
time.
that.
But the other thing too is like, you want to be able to have fun and not be bound, or to have fun, to have nice experiences and not feel like everything is the ball and chain of like your health. And I think that that's, these types of groups make it easier because we can talk about that and talk about like how even, navigating social stuff of like, hey, I really want to go do something with my friends, but I can't physically do it. How do you guys talk to your friends about approaching it? Because a lot of times you'll find that like for people who are, are blessed with amazing health, it's hard. It's a learning curve. Like it's not, that person's first thought isn't going to be, is this event I want to go to accessible for my bestie who has
Yeah.
psoriatic arthritis? Like, and so, but then it's like, you don't want to be a downer and have to remind everybody because then you get accused of you're making everything about your illness.
Yeah. Why do you always have to be awkward or be the problem, and yeah, all them sort of comments we've had.
So then, something I had, done for a long time is like I didn't tell people about what was going on. I hid it and I just, would say I couldn't make if I was really doing bad, I would just say I couldn't make it. And otherwise I would like hobble
Yeah.
myself out there. And, so this also gives us a way to be social in a safe way because we're coming, we're talking, we're getting some of that social stuff net because we're getting to interact with people and people who get it, but we're not having to mask in that way that we might have to do towards, with other people in our lives. So I think it's been like hugely helpful for me. And but also like, as a facilitator is, you kind of help keep the conversations going. We are able to find speakers to come in and talk to people. Like we've done chair yoga before through
Hmm.
Zoom. And for us it's like, meet us where you're at, right? We'll meet you where you're at. Like
Yeah.
if you're having a terrible day, we want to hear about it. If you're having an awesome week and you think your meds are working, we want to hear about it. Like, and that's just something, making space for all of the ups and downs
Yeah.
of the whole thing. And so, I think another part of volunteering that has been great for me is, the Arthritis Foundation, and this is my example because this is what I volunteer with them, but it could be for any organization, right? A lot of their big fundraisers are very active things, which
Yes. Yeah.
is and I from someone who worked in nonprofits, I understand why that is. 5Ks, fun runs, walk.
Good PR gets in the papers.
People like that. Like it's a thing you can do. It's a thing that like lots of people can do because most people, you know, oh, I don't want to say most people, but a lot of people, don't have anything that would prohibit them from going to participate in like Walk to Cure or a Jingle
Yeah.
Bell Run. And, so for me, I was wanting to get involved, but I needed to get involved in a way that was not going to end up like being harder for my body and the other way, right? Like as a runner, I doing like helping volunteer at a 5K or a walk or like a fun run walk, that, I'm still in a spot where that is like pouring salt on a raw wound for
Yeah.
me. I like,
Yeah.
and I will firmly own that. Like I haven't run in 2 years exactly on November 2nd. And I haven't been able to walk a mile since then either. So for me, like, to have to go and sit and work at a table for a 5K, like I would probably cry, right? And I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that about myself. So I was like, well, they have all these events and, but I'm not personally in the headspace for that, and I understand why those are popular events because they do make money. People will show up and show out.
And I think as well, people can relate. People can relate to the challenge. You know what I mean? So I'd done a
Mhm.
100-mile bike ride once, and it was the easiest fundraising event I'd ever done because I think people thought, well, I'd done 10-mile bike ride the other day and it nearly killed me. So that's amazing. Have my money. You know what I mean? So I think people can relate to that. But I think what you're saying is really true because I once had a physio challenge me about all my awareness events being things involving sitting at the desk and playing computer games. And I was like, well, one, they're accessible. And two, that's something I can do right now that other people can do with me. If I start saying I'm going to go climb a mountain or do something like that, then that doesn't feel like I'm setting a very realistic sort of image and bar and everything else for other people living with the disease. So yeah, it's really important that you mentioned that.
Right. And so, like, I hope to one day be at peace with some of that, or at least, or maybe recovered and get to participate to where I would feel comfortable doing like that. But I know myself and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm going to straight up cry all over their sign in sheet. Like, I can't do that. And
So I'm laughing about it because I
no,
can
no,
relate
like
to
it's
it.
like it's real, like right, like that's
Yeah,
really like the real deal for
yeah.
me. Like so, at one point, like they were like, "Oh, would you wanna chair a team?" And I was like, "To be honest with you, I don't think I would. I will support you by sharing your posts online, and I will encourage my the people that I know that are still in the running and walking communities here. I will encourage them to go sign up. But I just where I'm at, I need to do something that's a little bit more physically accessible to me and not make me feel like I'm missing out on something."
Yeah, it's
That
painful, right? You know, like
right,
I used to get depressed every summer, and when I'm not normally I make light and don't go into how serious. Like I meant really depressed every summer, and I realised after about 3 years of this, it was every time I saw on social media that my rugby team was doing pre-season training. You know, because it was that the season had ended. I'd had a couple of months where I guess it had left my mind of what I'd missed out on, and then all these people that used to be my real close friends got back together and started sharing posts and drinks and all this sort of thing. And it's painful, isn't it? So even when
yeah,
people have tried, and I totally get people are trying to help, they say, oh, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you get involved like that? But I think if you're still in that grief phase, then then it hurts still,
And
doesn't
it
it?
hurts, right? And then two, for me, it's unknown of if I get on the right meds, maybe I can go back and do it. So it's like I can't leave the limbo grief phase because I don't, it's like I
Yeah.
haven't seen enough for how much it's, where are we going? So with it. So I was like, I really politely declined and I was like, I will help you with your social media. I will help you with anything else. Like I'm happy to volunteer in that way. But I think that's another thing about volunteering is you have to find the volunteering that is going to work for you, right?
Yes.
And two, like a lot of times, okay, maybe there's an event. Like they sometimes they do like galas, which ideally that's not a running related thing. So I should feel more comfortable with that. However, if the type of help that they need is lugging boxes in and out of an
Yeah.
auditorium, stuff like that, like you got me for about 10 minutes and then my ankles are going to say no.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
And it's really important, I think, to speak up about that stuff because well, my wife would be able to vouch for this. The amount of events and things I've offered to help with, get involved in, where it all seem like great on paper, and then when you're in the middle of it, everyone around you has forgotten that you are living with the condition that you are doing the event for. So, like, I've done a bit of traveling in the last couple of years, and the amount of phone calls she's had where I'm just in tears saying I've been asked to do something extra, or something else has dropped in, or they want me to be somewhere else. None of it was like agreed or whatever. It's like we're all supposed to be here supporting this condition or whatever, and everyone's forgotten. So I think it's really important that we find ways to have those conversations to remind people that when you're doing this, you are also living with it as well.
and I think that that's the thing too is, I mean, personally, the Arthritis Foundation has been awesome whenever any of us facilitators bring stuff up like that, or we, because the folks that we work with on their team as facilitators, they are so committed to accessibility and making sure that the groups are meeting us where we need to be and serving what us patients need and want. So they have been great to work. Like when I said, you know what, I really don't think I could do that because it hurts, like they were like, okay, understood, understood.
Brilliant.
But the thing is, the other thing too is, I think they do a good job of having opportunities for people of all severity levels, right? Like if you're someone
Love
with
that.
really mild PSA, yeah, you're going to go work that gala or work the Jingle Bell Run. For people like me who are still, a little bit more on the severe side currently, yes, I can help you moderate a webinar. Like, I mean, I'm doing that for them later in December. I'm helping like moderate a webinar and they will reach out to us if they need help with other stuff too. They're like, is anybody interested in volunteering for this or that? And for me, it's been a great way to get involved and feel like I'm being productive with it, make it with this condition. I'm like doing something about it. Even though I'm not like a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I can't go cure arthritis. But if I can contribute in some way to the mission of trying to do that and helping serve my, our PSA population, then, absolutely, I love to do it.
You absolutely are contributing. I'm just going to jump in and say that, just from what we've witnessed in the last two shows, hearing you speak, you absolutely are contributing.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the thing for me is just, like turning it into something that I can put something positive out there and I can, every time I think about arthritis, it doesn't have to be, I don't feel sad. I mean, most of the time I feel sad, right? But like if I'm thinking about, oh, I have my Connect group call next week, I'm excited to that because somebody's, I know somebody's going to come on and they're going to have, something great news to share with us, or they're going to have gotten some revelation about something to share with us, or they're going to go through a hard time and we'll be there to help them. And so I think that just volunteering too, it can really just fill a social, thing, but then also, it makes you feel like you are, in the larger participation of trying to help, everyone with your disease too, and to fight the good fight, if it will, against arthritis.
I love that because we've had it on here on the show before where people had some bad experience. I know I personally have as well. And I think it's a really good reminder that, like, if you are feeling like a tick box or just like is tokenism, or in my experience, you get a WhatsApp message asking where you are rather than why you're not there, which should be the first question, like, are you okay? If you haven't had experiences, guys, you've not found the right group, organization, people, box to fit into. Because as Angela's speaking about here, like, that just sounds amazing. It's the right way to do it. And I just thank you for coming on and sharing positive experiences, because that is one where it's not always been the case when we've had people on the show talk about it. And volunteers are so essential. And as somebody who's just started a new patient organization, it's terrifying. Without volunteers, the whole thing falls down. It's impossible to deliver what you want to deliver and help people. So on from that side of the table, on behalf of everyone, thank you for willing to give up your time and get involved, because it does help. And when people can relate and see in the other side of the table, the person living with that condition as well, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like the louder we are about what it is like to live with these things, maybe the easier it'll be down the line. Like, if we can get it to be more studied, if we can get it to be more popularly known by the doctors and whatever, like, can that, put us further along in our treatments, like,
Yeah.
can there be more treatments, and more knowledge? And I firmly think that, like, the more knowledge that, it's always good. So
Yeah,
whatever we
and
can
just
learn.
injecting that lived experience absolutely everywhere. We talked about that a lot on the show as well, about how not coming in at the end but being in right from the start, and I think volunteering is another example of that. Because if you're running them groups, you're facilitating those groups so people can turn up, and straight away there is lived experience at the heart of it, and I think that makes a huge difference in the services that people get and the help they receive.
And, something that I did want to plug for our groups is that, they're anonymous and confidential. Like, we recognize people's names because they come back every time. But, like, anything people say there, it just stays there. Like here, like, I might share, like, general topics maybe we've talked about in the past, but, like, I would never say that so and so said this exactly, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
very much, like, confidential, which a lot of people really want that. A lot of people want to be able to come and just say what they need to say and, get it off their chest, and, but they might not feel like they can say that to, their loved
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, amazing. And I've no idea where the time has gone. It's our second week in a row talking, and we've still absolutely flown through it. So I'm just in the time. So I've been sharing on screen, for those listening to this back, arthritis.org as a web address for Arthritis Foundation. Is there any, whilst you've got the opportunity, is there any, you've talked a bit about certain groups and certain events, is there anything you want to plug either on behalf of them, for them, or any other sort of peer support stuff where people can find some of that help, or if they want to get involved?
I would say if you are listening and you have PSA and you want to come join our group, we would love to have you. You have to make an account on the Arthritis Foundation, but it's free. It just lets people register for events and stuff like that. They also do a lot of webinars and a lot of things like that are also free. You just kind of register and you can just tune in. I know there's one not about PSA, but there's going to be one about a different type of arthritis that I'll be moderating at some point in December. I don't know that that's up on their calendar yet, but yeah, there's a lot of ways to get involved. With a lot of stuff. I know there's so many other groups out there for rheumatological diseases, skin diseases, like everything out there. I mean, if you look hard enough, you can probably find a foundation or a group.
Yeah, and like I say, it goes back to finding the one that fits for you as well, doesn't it? Like we were talking about earlier. So thank you so much for sharing that. You're an absolute asset to them. I'm sure they realise that, and if they don't, hopefully they watch this back, and they do. And yeah, thank you for raising awareness of not only the work they do, but also how people like yourself can get involved, despite, like we've talked about, the grief and the pain and the struggles. It gives you a little bit of control in your life. I know it certainly does for me. It gives me a little bit of hope as well. When I can't fix my own situation, at least I know I might be able to help somebody else's. So thank you so much. You are like you're the embodiment of what we're here for on Sunday evenings.
Thank you.
In terms of your message and the way you manage your condition by trying to help others. it's exactly what we exist for. So thank you so much again for joining me, Angela. I don't know where that 45 minutes has gone. It's absolutely flown by. And I do hope you'll join us again. If anything, I just want to, I'm going to need to definitely catch up with you and pick your brains about your involvement in non-profits and volunteering, because clearly there's a lot I can learn there. So yeah, thank you again.
Sure, anytime. I'll come back anytime.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll speak soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.